Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always trying to bring guests from all different walks of life, impacting the world. Hopefully we can apply it to our daily lives and careers. So today we have Shannon Petrovich. She's a licensed counsel social worker, and she's on YouTube. She's a thought leader, influencer. And so today it's going to be talking all about, healing from toxic relationship, improving our lives, getting better aligned, and developing ourselves. So Shannon, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liu. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I know we had talked about talk backstage and connected through Podmatch. Tell us more about yourself and how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Well, I've been a therapist for about 35 years. And in that time, I really, value and cherish my work. But about 4 years ago, I realized that there are so many millions of people around the world who don't have any access to mental health help, or even information, strategies, even basic things. And so I decided to start a YouTube channel, and I called it Therapist Talks. And just had a lot of different topics that I would address. And then all of the comments coming back and all of the questions and all of the focus seemed to be on toxic relationships, especially narcissistic relationships. So that started to become more of my focus because that was the biggest need. And then about a year ago, I realized that just doing 10-minute videos wasn't really doing justice to the people who really, really needed help. So I wrote a book and published it in May, and it's called Out of the Fog into the Clear, Journaling to Help You Heal from Toxic Relationships.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's quite interesting how you source the crowd and through social media and through creative content. And what's interesting is, and then that grew, and then so that developed into writing a book. I know you talk about these kind of your big key ideas. So one thing is this dealing with and healing from toxic relationships.
Right. It's unfortunately a very, very, very large problem. I don't know that anybody gets away with living their entire lives without some sort of toxic relationship in their lives. And it can be a parent or a sibling, or it can be a partner, husband, wife, life partner, or it can even be a coworker. But people are struggling with toxic relationships. And if you're not that type of person, if you're not narcissistic, if you're really genuinely honest and compassionate and caring generally, it almost baffles you that somebody could be mean-spirited and vengeful and hateful and dishonest and really delusionally that way. So a lot of people really struggle with this, and getting information out to them has been really key.
Yeah. And why are there, find what a toxic relationship is, just kind of emotionally or energetically, or just, kind of the underlying dynamics, so, people can identify or understand what, a toxic relationship is.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem. A lot of times we get sucked into something and we think that we're in love, and we're actually being depleted over time. So a toxic relationship is with somebody who is basically very much about themselves, and they're not a whole person sharing with another whole person to better each whole person. They are sort of a black hole in the universe, if you will, or a vampire who locks onto somebody and sucks the blood out of them. You can't always see it initially, but as you get better at taking care of yourself internally, you will see it. So it's really important. And I start my book this way, with assessing the toxic relationship within your own self, because a lot of people, probably even most of us, are really, really hard on ourselves. And when we are struggling, we think that we are telling ourselves, I'm so stupid, I'm such a loser, this is awful, I can't believe I blew this badly. And so even really brilliant, really amazing people tend to be really hard on themselves internally. And so essentially you have a toxic relationship with yourself that you have to address first. And then when you get clear of that and you recognize who you really are as a whole person, and then you won't allow other people to devalue you or run you down or lie to you and get away with it, or be in that delusional selfishness with you.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you were talking about, toxic relationship, and the most common I hear about is, the narcissist and the codependent, and they latch onto each other and they just feed off each other, and there's all this drama, and one can't survive without the other. The others I hear about is bullying. Usually, bullies, if you stand up to them, and they usually back down. So these are kind of the most common too. What are some strategies or tools or tactics that someone can do to get free from a abusive partner? This sort of toxic situation.
Yeah, that's so important. Thanks for asking. I like to think of it as sort of like an empty, somebody who's really toxic and self-centered, narcissistic traits is like a hot air balloon that has to be constantly pumped with hot air, or it implodes and then it explodes. And so some people with this emptiness that have to be constantly buoyed up and inflated by other people are very difficult to deal with in that bullying sense. But sometimes they're actually that more martyr narcissist. And so that's the person who's kind of attacking you from a victim-y place, where they're saying, oh, you're so mean to me, and they're the ones being mean, and you're so toxic, and you're so narcissistic, and sort of that really twisted gaslighting. And they tend to implode and then sort of demand that you rescue them. So they'll be suicidal and, drama, emotions, and that sort of thing. So there's kind of two flavors, if you will, that covert or that overt. But it's really important that we learn to stop undermining ourselves. And that's the most important piece of getting away from toxic relationships. We have to stop what I call the 3 Ps, people pleasing, placating, and peacekeeping. And those are our tendencies as empathic people. And when we do that, what we're doing is undermining our own truths, undermining our own thoughts, feelings, needs, wants. And we are placating that other person to the point where they really don't take any responsibility for their emotions. And we are kind of colluding with them in a sense to take care of their emotions for them. So that is what sets up that toxic dynamic. And when we are engaging in that, till we stop doing the 3 Ps, we can't make anything better. So when we can stop the 3 Ps, then we can start to set boundaries. And when we set boundaries, people say to me all the time, boundaries don't work. And I'll say, well, boundaries always work. So either the boundary works because that person stopped doing that behavior. That anytime they're yelling at you on the phone or in person, you'd say, I'm going to leave now and we can talk later if you can calm down, but this was not productive and I'm not going to let you talk to me that way. So if you hang up, you leave the room, if you leave the house or whatever, you're kind of giving them a grown-up timeout, because essentially it's a tantrum, right? They want what they want, they're not getting it, so they're blowing up over it. And so when you give them that grown-up timeout, then they can choose to, oh man, every time I do that, she walks away or he walks away or hangs up the phone. I guess I can't treat that person this way any longer. So they can change that behavior. Or the other option, and sometimes this happens, is that person escalates and they become more aggressive and more violent and more angry. Then you know that relationship is not salvageable. So it's really important that you set those boundaries, that you stop placating, that you tell your truth in love, and that then you see what happens. So either they get better or they get worse. Either way, the boundary worked because it gave you the information you need to know whether to stick around and work on it or give up.
Yeah. And how did the feelings of guilt and shame, because, some people, they never enforce their boundaries. They sort of let people walk over them, and then they start to enforce their boundaries, but then they feel guilty or shame for speaking up. What do you say for those individuals?
It's so so true. Guilt and shame pop up whenever we set boundaries if we're doing that dance inside our own heads already. And so again, we have to start from the inside out. We have to look at how we're talking to ourselves inside our own heads. And when you're setting a boundary, all you're doing is saying, I need to fully exist in this relationship. Are you willing to honor that? And that person is either telling you, yeah, I'm willing to honor that, or they're not. So you have nothing to feel guilty about. You need to fully exist everywhere in your life. And if you're not allowed to, then you need to remove yourself from that situation. So the guilt and shame is an old story that you've told yourself from probably childhood. And you have to take out and sort out that old story because it's not the truth.
Interesting. It's all about the stories. And, so yeah, I've done a lot of reading on this and, a lot of self-development and, everybody has some form of trauma, emotional from childhood, parent, etc. So how do people heal from that? Like, what are some steps and what steps can people take?
Ideally, everybody would have access to their own therapist, but we know that's not true. And so I really created this book to try to help people in a self-help type of way. And I think journaling is a really great way to walk through something with being able to separate your emotional mind from your rational mind, because your emotional mind is very hooked in by this person. You think you're in love with them, but it's a sort of an unhealthy attachment, but it's a strong attachment. It's powerful, and it's not something that you can just ignore. You have to look at it and look at what the stories are behind that. And you can do that through journaling. And then you can also rationally say, this person isn't good for me. Emotionally, physically, maybe even financially, I'm bankrupted. I'm being bankrupted by this person and I need to get out. And so you can look at the facts and just the facts, and you can decide with your rational mind, I need to get out of this relationship. And then you're kind of dragging your heart, kicking and screaming through the process of getting free, because your heart's not going to be on board. You can still love a person and leave them. You can know with your heart that you're still really attached and still make that wise decision to walk away.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it's almost like taking a leap, and then, yeah, that's quite fascinating. And then tell us, you talked about your book and with this, what led you to write this book, and, what sort of individuals would benefit from, reading your book?
I think that, as I said, the feeling that so many people weren't able to walk that through and had so much confusion around the perspectives and strategies and ability, those ways to get free. So I wanted to write a book and pull it all together. And I did the journaling prompts throughout it so that people would have a guide in a sense. But, you can use the journaling prompts just to ask yourself those questions. You don't have to write it out and journal it all out, because some people hate that. Or you can use those questions to talk it through with a family member or loved one that is on your team. And when you write out those facts, then it helps you to keep the facts straight and your rational mind straight, so that you can walk it through. But for a lot of people, just understanding the difference between your rational and your emotional, understanding the concept of trauma bonding helps them get free. So anybody who's been through a toxic relationship, and even if you've gotten free, but you're not emotionally separated yet, because a lot of people will be 3,000 miles away and still ruminating about that person, or still obsessed with that person, or stalking them online to see if they now have a partner and now are married, and what was wrong with me that I couldn't make it work. All of that stuff you torture yourself with. So even if you've gotten free physically, but you're not free emotionally, you could benefit.
Interesting. I know a lot of this is, trauma, healing work, all of that, alignment, and what manifesting. All of these are very interesting and, very powerful tools and fields. How can people follow you, search you, contact you, and also look at your book?
Thanks. therapisttalks.com or nofoggydays.com will get you to the same place. And that has the link to my book. It's also on Amazon and Kindle. But nofoggydays.com is my website. You'll see my YouTube channel there. On YouTube, it's just Therapist Talks. And I think the same on Instagram and Facebook.
Excellent. And for all the listeners out there, Shannon's resources will be in the links and show notes. And we want to thank again Shannon for coming on and being a wonderful guest and talking to us about healing and trauma, and it's been a great discussion. So thanks so much, and we look forward to hearing about your future success.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lou. I really enjoyed meeting you.